floor is yours, Stan.
Thanks. My name's Stan, and I'm a drug addict and alcoholic, and a recovered member. And when I first got clean and sober, I couldn't even get through the first part of the big book because on the title page, the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered. This is the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. I would get in an argument about recovered and recover and recovery. And yet the question before that would be, Stan, are you willing to do whatever it takes for victory over drugs and alcohol? Oh, yeah. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, man. Verbally, yes. Actions, say no. And I was baffled and I was confused. I didn't even know what I suffered from. But I went to treatment 7 times, and I had 7 big books, and I had 7 12 and 12s, and I had 7 men's meditation books from Touchstones from Hazelton. Wrote out my first step 7 times, wrote out my second step 7 times, wrote out my third step 7 times. So I'm a meeting maker that wasn't going to make it, is what I'm saying. That I was going to die on the front row of a 12-step meeting. How did I get into cocaine and alcohol? I'll give you just one sentence. I was born in Miami, Florida. I grew up in the 80s. It was just relatively available because I come from a non-alcoholic, non-drug addict home, non-violent home, and I was a violent drug addict and alcoholic. My mom and dad couldn't become cocaine addicts or alcoholics even if they wanted to. Neither could my brother or sister. Because alcoholism and drug addiction isn't causality. There's some sort of genetic disposition in my body where I process drugs and alcohol differently than other folks. But see, I still would go back to the God of reasoning that it talks about in the big book. Nowadays, I like to call it self-talk, right? I go back to my self-talk. Now I know. Even though Bill Wilson called it self-knowledge. In fact, he says the potential alcoholic or alcoholic will be absolutely unable to stay sober on self-knowledge. And he says we like to emphasize and re-emphasize, and I think he's talking about everybody else in the rooms that I'm going to, not me. See, because I'm hearing people, don't pick up and you won't get high. That is physically and emotionally comforting to someone like me sitting in a meeting of either CA or AA or Heroin Anonymous or Drug Addicts Anonymous. Very comforting. I can do that. Guess what? I can't do that. I think I can. Stan, just play the tape through. I can do that. I can't do that. I either change the tape or the tape's different or it gets tangled up. If I could do that, I wouldn't be here. I would have that written on a Post-it note and I'd be living my life. I used cocaine to treat my drug addiction. It was my solution. You take it away and I get irritable, restless, and discontent. So my clean date's October 3rd, 1994, 29 years ago. And for all I know, I got clean and sober the day before I died of this illness. And I didn't even know it. See, I don't know any of this till after I did the work in the hindsight. But I want to know and understand and feel prior to doing it. No idea. I had no idea that I couldn't tell the true from the false. That my life as an alcoholic and drug addict was the only normal one I knew. That I was self-delusional. And that when they wrote this book, published it in 39, but when they started putting it together from 35 to 39, that they were talking about me, someone that was going to be born in 1966. That they were going to write about the common manifestations of the allergy. See, I have other manifestations, but I'm not going to talk about them here. See, I'm going to talk about the common manifestations, the thing that works for 100% of us. That on October 3rd, 1994, I'm coming out of detox at Grady Hospital in downtown Atlanta because I'm living on the streets now. I'm a 28-year-old guy, college graduate, lost my career at CNN. That's why I was living in Atlanta, and I'm living on the streets. because I can't get clean and sober. And I used to think, man, I must not want it. I wanted it. I must not be trying harder. I was trying as hard as I can. But I'm delusional. I'm the one sitting in the front row of the meetings when they're reading how it works, saying, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed their path. And I'm shaking my head up and down because I think I'm thoroughly following the path. Steps are hanging up behind the guy. Traditions are hanging up behind the guy. And I'm like, yeah, man. Wasn't even coming close. I didn't need more meetings. I needed a design for living that works in rough going that included meetings. I needed a spiritual awakening. I needed a psychic change. I needed lightning in a bottle. No wonder I needed God and didn't even know it. So I'm coming out of Grady like I always do now. See, I'm not going to the nice places. I'm not going to Hazleton up in Minnesota anymore. I'm not going to Hazleton in West Palm. I'm not going to Decatur Hospital or Emory Hospital for detox. They're taking me to the indigent hospital, dropping me off. Spend 7 days there. They give you some new used clothes when you leave and give you $2.25 to take MARTA to public transportation. But what I knew is I could easily cross the street and go to the liquor store because that was the first thing I would see and get a pint of Jim Beam for $2.25. Then I could go on and do whatever else I wanted. And I would tell those nurses, you're never going to see me again. And you could have hooked me up to a lie detector test. I meant it. I want to stay clean and sober. I want what didn't know what the book said, but what I know now is that the only relief we can suggest is entire abstinence. And I could have passed that lie detector test. Back then, detox was on the 6th floor. I'd take that elevator down. The minute I opened those doors on either Spring Street or Martin Luther King Boulevard, that wind would hit me, and all of a sudden, I'd fall into that trance. Parallel reasoning on the 6th floor, 1st floor, unsound reasoning. And I'd walk across the street. But on this day, here come this guy rolling up. And I didn't like him because I'd see him at meetings. And he was always carrying his book around. Zealot, big book zealot, just had come into the rooms, picked up one desire chip, had gotten a sponsor, had done the work, and here he was, all smiley. 15 years, clean and sober. One white chip. Well, whoop-de-fucking-do. What do we have in common? What are you going to tell me, old man? Because he was 65 with 15 years, and I've got day 6 or 7 at age 28. And I still think I know. And he said, Stan, what are you doing? I just got out of detox again, Joe. Do you want to get clean and sober? Yeah, I do. Where are you going? To the liquor store. He opens up his glove box, and there's the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And under it was a 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book. And he said, Stan, you have the most powerful illness in the world. You need the most powerful solution in the world. I can offer that to you. That held my interest. He didn't tell me to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. He didn't tell me to call him for 30 days straight to see if I was willing. He said he could offer me a solution. See, I wanted the results I saw. I didn't like the methods that I was hearing. And I said, Joe, I got no place to live, man. I'm poor. I hated being poor. And he took me and dropped me off at this men's mission, the Atlanta Union Mission in downtown Atlanta. I stayed there almost a year. Eating soup 3 times a day. But he'd pick me up on Saturday mornings and take me to this men's meeting at the Triangle Club on Piedmont Avenue. And after that meeting, we'd go to Piedmont Park. And I would read this book to him. And when it came time to do something, I'd do it. And that's it. That's literally it. No PowerPoints. He wouldn't have me listening to TED Talks. He wasn't worksheets. I wasn't writing out a first step, second step, third step. I wasn't tricking myself to get on my knees. I wasn't. Man, all we're going to do is meet once a week. Yeah. We read the doctor's opinion. And I still couldn't understand it. All I knew is after we read the doctor's opinion that if I didn't do steps 1 through 12, I was going to drink and use again. See, because I used to come up with these brilliant ideas. See, one time after treatment, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to smoke weed. I didn't pass this by anybody. I didn't ask anyone. It just was one of the other bright ideas. Like it seems similar, seems like it should work. Maybe it lasted 24 hours. All I know is I was using cocaine and drinking within 24 or 48 hours. Another time I went to treatment, came out and thought, you know what, I'm just going to do what I do and I'll just drink non-alcoholic beer while I'm out and about. Didn't know even non-alcoholic beer was for non-alcoholics. That lasted, I think, 48 hours. Didn't know about the whole entire abstinence thing. Didn't know about the physical allergy that I had, this phenomenon of craving. See, I kept hearing the insanity stuff about doing the same thing over and over again when really the book was telling me that I had this inability to think straight. That was it. That again, back to I had this sound reasoning, and parallel to it was this unsound reasoning, and this unsound reasoning would just pop over. And it would pop over with this. The thought would cross my mind. And Stan's off to the races. That's it. That's all it took. Like in Fred's story. Not a cloud on the horizon. What you men told me about alcoholism did not occur to me. I could be at a 7 a.m. AA meeting or CA meeting and I'd be drunk by 9 a.m. What I heard at that meeting did not even occur to me when I walked out. That this last time, plus the humiliation of it, will obviously prevent me or give me this defense. I just got to remember how painful it is. But see, the book says I can't bring it into consciousness with sufficient force. See, if I sometimes can bring it into consciousness, but I can't do it with sufficient force. Of the suffering, of the humiliation of a week or month ago, that I'm without defense against the first drink. Man, that's what goes on in my brain. I didn't even know it. 12 years of in and out of institutions and treatments in jail. And here I was sitting with this guy that I didn't like. And I'm getting better and don't even know it. Because he told me I could get well in a few months. He told me relapse was not part of recovery. It was part of the illness. That Dr. Silkworth wrote this paper on relapse, and he says a patient relapses when he stops following directions. That there was a treatment plan in Alcoholics Anonymous. And we're going to follow that plan. Precisely, clear cut. As definite as this example. That type of wording. See, when the book was written, that was everyday language back then, at least for a high school, college graduate. So he gave me a big book dictionary. And I was mad, right? I was mad. It's not my idea. I don't like doing it. Don't tell me what to do. Look up the word stand. Don't tell me what to do. Your life's on the line. I don't care. Don't tell me what to do. But only with this. When it came to money or sex, I'm willing to do whatever. Yeah, man. I'm in. No questions asked. When I was at school at Florida State, wanted a degree in communications and radio and broadcasting. I did what they said. Did the schoolwork. They said, Stan, go get an internship at CNN in Atlanta. I did that. Go get a graduate degree at Georgia Tech. I did that. So I get this career that I want, but I can't stay in it because of my untreated alcoholism. And then they're telling me this thing's going to save my life and will treat my alcoholism if I just follow these directions. And I either substitute, don't do it, do stuff similar, shortcuts, and then get offended when you keep me accountable. Call you aggressive. Tell me that you're attacking me. Go to another meeting. Telling that guy I have abandonment issues, and he goes, no, you don't, Stan. You make people leave. Fuck. I'm going to punch you. Man. Self-centered and didn't even know it. Didn't even know that that was the price to be paid. This destruction of self-centeredness, that how painful that really was. The dishonesty with myself, that I wasn't complicated. I was selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and frightened. See, he knew the book and I didn't. He's telling me these things as we're reading along. He's taking the meetings. He's taking me to meetings around the Atlanta area, and I'd sit next to him, and if I raised my hand and it was something I shouldn't be talking about, he would pull my arm down. And then he would talk to me afterwards. And after every share, he'd lean over and tell me, that's in the big book or that's not in the big book. That's simple, but that hard. Don't tell me what to do. You're hurting my feelings. I get so angry, so violent. That's the stuff I couldn't change. That's the internal unmanageability. That's the irritable, restless discontent, especially the discontent. There was nothing on this planet that could make me content. It could get me excited. It could make me happy briefly, and then it would wear off. And my interaction with people, my relationships with people was, if you treated me special, I felt normal. And if you treated me normal, I felt neglected. And when I felt neglected, you're going to fucking pay. And nothing was going to change that. There wasn't enough therapy in this world, another human tool. Great tool, but a human tool. There wasn't a self-help book on this planet. And I read every self-help book up until 1994. And they're great for the 5 senses that I already had. But I'm talking about this 6th sense, this God consciousness. And he's telling me this shit, and I think he's in the world of spiritual make-believe. And I'm the one. And like the book says, I just smile. Good Lord, Joe. No brainwash, no nothing, just full on. He had been transformed. He had been reborn, and he was telling me he could give that to me. I am an ordinary guy, and this guy's telling me he'd give me an extraordinary life if I do this work. Yeah. I want a miracle like that. I want what they talk about in the spiritual experience. I want that profound reaction to life to be different than the way I was living. And reading Bill's story and seeing where alcohol and drugs were my master, I was overwhelmed. Quicksand stretched all around me. Dude, you weren't going to tell my family you're in self-pity. They'd be like, why? They're normal folks, man. They have a logical idea of what this world's about. They're emotionally mature. Man. But here was this guy across the table from me that used to be just like me internally. And he sponsored all these other guys that were just like me internally and who had gotten well. Man, and reading there is a solution. I'm sitting here now with absolute certainty that this program works 100% and there's a God. And that I still can't define it. My finite mind trying to figure out this infinite power. And then read more about alcoholism and we agnostics. That I had how many psychiatrist offices I had sat and been asked thousands of questions, but had never read the two in we agnostics. That if I couldn't quit entirely, or when I started, I couldn't control the amount. And then if I had that, I was probably suffering from an illness that only a spiritual experience could conquer. That psychic change that the doctor talked about. That when he is talking, or when Bill's talking about the doctor later on about spiritual experience, the doctor, he says he knows they are real. I know they are real. But prior to this, I didn't. So I wouldn't even try. They beg of me a few places in this book, and one of them is to lay aside my prejudice about God and the things. See, the minute you mention God, hair on my neck, because I related it to my past experiences. Couldn't just wipe the slate clean and start here. Let's do this work. When he told me what the book said, that half the membership was either atheist or agnostic prior to doing this work. I'm not smart enough to be an atheist, but I'm sure I'm an agnostic. This agnostic temperament, my character is agnostic. It's not even a choice. Again, what is going to change that? No wonder they used to do shock therapy and lobotomies. Jeez. It's a behavior modification. It's full on like, yeah, I needed to be reborn. I didn't need a better version of myself. A better version of myself is not being caught. I needed to be reborn where there was no danger of being caught. We alcoholics live this double life. And in the book, it talks about these sprees we go on. I lived a double life in sobriety. Jeez. I'm sitting here with treated alcoholism, and I'm still selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and frightened. The message in this book, not my message, because my message contains stuff that's selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and frightened. Sometimes I know it, sometimes I don't even know it. I'd never written a 4-step like out of the book. My inventory never looked like page 65. It was worksheets, printouts, Hazelton pamphlets, anything. The easier, softer way. While I'm drinking, outside of drinking, in AA, NCA, in Heroin Anonymous, in Drug Addicts Anonymous. My sponsor now, Chris Raymer. Man, that's all we do is talk about the book. That's how I know the book. Still can't read it alone. I know the book because of him and because of his twin brother Myers and the sponsorship family that I never wanted to be a part of. That's the whole thing. I'm in something I never wanted to be a part of. Doing stuff I never wanted to do. I come from a family of do-gooders. And I'm like, I never want to help people. I wanted to sober up, just be happy and live my life, and y'all leave me alone. This transformation. Setting aside the drink or drug problem. They tell how their lives were unsatisfactory. They will tell you how the change came over them. My responsibility. That on that first 12-step meeting that I was court-ordered to go to, I didn't care if that meeting was going to be there the next day or not. And now I'm indebted to the message in the big book. And I owe some people. The folks that had helped me out. And that loving family that I was able to repair. And I do that 4-step, and then I do that 5th step. And I go back to the mission, because that's my home. It says when we go back home. And I'm in that bunk bed, and I'm reading those questions after the 5th step, and had we omitted something? I'd omitted some stuff. I'd done my resentment inventory, I'd done my fear inventory, and I'd done my sexual conduct. It was my conduct around sex and relationships. So I called Joe back, told him what I had omitted. Then on that bunk bed, I did 6 and 7. The way it says. And then I have a list, man, that I'd refer back to. And he told me I'd be on different footing. And I was. He also told me religion would save my soul. Alcoholics Anonymous and Cocaine Anonymous would save my life. And not to get him confused. Because I get confused a lot. Just say two things and all of a sudden I roll into confusion. But I don't think this thing is a mental illness, was what I used to say. That it centers in the brain. I work for the University of Utah. We have a detox at the University of Utah. It's a huge research medical college university. But we're spending gazillion dollars, gazillions and gazillions of doing this research to produce what the 12 steps do. But they want to do it medically, right? With medical interventions. Doing research on ketamine and psilocybin, and now we're doing the neuroplasticity stuff, the stuff that the spiritual awakening psychic change does, rewires my brain. There's no money in God, folks. I got to tell you, I love everything I have because I know where it came from. I can't believe the life I get to live. I did some unforgivable things. I didn't want to do my 4th and 5th step. I didn't want to do 8 and 9. I had this list and I'm like, there's no way, man. That family doesn't talk to me anymore. They'd cut off communication. Not sure if I would have done this, but Joe paid for me to fly back to South Florida. I didn't know if that family was what they were going to do or not. I couldn't even call and ask for permission to show up. Showed up at that house I grew up in North Palm Beach, Florida, and I knocked on the door. My mom answered. What are you doing here? I did what the book says. I told her what I had done up to then. She automatically knew there was something different. I wasn't saying I'm sorry. I wasn't saying I needed money. I don't want to stay the night. This is what I've done up to now. Can I talk to you? And I made those amends with her. And her request was when I eventually would get a year sober, would I move back and be the son that I never was and the brother that I never was. See, because it's, again, back in the 9th step, remember, we decided we'd do anything for victory over alcohol. Right? So what, now I'm going to be like backtracking? So I said, yeah, and she let me in and I talked to my dad and that brother and that sister. And, about Dr. Bob's story, he actually, in the Vision for You, when they're talking about Dr. Bob, he says, what he writes is, my 30 years of drinking were repaired in 4. And all those years of drinking and drugging, mine was repaired in 18 months. And I made those amends. And I remember going back to CNN. It was back when Ted Turner owned CNN. And he's a friend of Alcoholics Anonymous. He just is. He's not an alcoholic, but he sent me to treatment 3 times. And I know I still knew everybody at CNN. They let me in. I go up to Ted's office and he's like, who let you in here? I'm like, Ted, I know all the security guys. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking he's going to give me my job back. And he didn't. And for me, it was one of those crushing blows in sobriety, doing this work of wanting to throw up my hands. Why is God forsaken me? Going through all that. When all he said was, no, you're not having your job back. In fact, Stan, don't ever try to get a job in broadcasting again. All right. Well, there goes that career. But I forget God's involved. I forget my finite mind, this tunnel vision. Because it was probably 6 months, 9 months later, I'm down in South Florida working for NBC. But going through that process of making all my amends, all, all of them, done them all. I didn't want to. If I waited till I felt like it, I wouldn't have done any of this. And we read about the 10th step. We read about the 11th step. We read about the 12th step. And I go through that really quickly because I went through that really quickly with him and I thought it was optional. He didn't say it was optional. Nobody told me it was optional. It was just this feeling I got. And I don't know, continue to watch for, okay. On awakening, yeah, retire at night. Help who you can. All right. Didn't know it was imperative. A command. Imperative means a command. If I wanted to get through the highs and lows. So I go on my merry way and I move back down to South Florida. I'm doing all this, continually to do this repair work. I'm going to meetings and taking meetings out to a prison every Friday. And I'm a cameraman for NBC and I'm the cameraman for ESPN and ABC. And I'm covering the Dolphins and the Miami Heat and the Miami Hurricanes and the Marlins and just, I'm going through the book once a year too. But folks, it was like I was weeding the garden once a year because again, it came back to 10 and 11 and 12 and I'm just doing it whenever I feel like doing it. But I don't know that. I'm telling you now if I'm looking back on it. So I'm going to tell you what happened was at that 9 or 10 year mark, my dad died of lymphoma. I'm not feeling so great. These thoughts, considerations of taking my life are now turning into options. And then starting to turn into the self-talk of like, man, I've had a good 9, 10 year run. I'm just going to take my life and be done with this. Just want to die sober. And so before I acted on it, I thought, you know what? They had told me when I moved from Atlanta back down to North Palm Beach, Florida, to stay and get a physician, have your doctor be in the program. I was like, all right. So I'd gotten a doctor in the program. Her name is Bonnie. So I thought, I'm going to go see her maybe. Because there's a part in the book that talks, we are miracles of mental health. Some people may need medication, right? So I'm thinking, maybe I need medication. Because in my mind, I'm doing the program like I'm doing the program. So I go see her. She goes, Stan, tell me what's been going on. So I tell her. So she spins her little stool around, and I think she's opening her cabinet, and I'm thinking she's getting a prescription pad. She pulls out the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And she said, Stan, are you doing the 10th step? I'm like, yeah, I'm doing the 10th step. And then she opens that page on 84. And she reads me, continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. She goes, you doing that on a daily basis? Making it, that's live, Stan. She goes, this is live. Are you doing this live? And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. That's not the version I'm doing. She goes, okay. You doing step 11? Oh, yeah. She turns the page. When we retire at night, she reads that. Then you do an inventory at night? You looking over your day? Did it? Yeah, I'm not. Every night I go, Bonnie, every night? Yeah, every night. Well, no. Then she reads On Awakening. You doing this on every morning, Stan? I just put my hands over my face. I'm just like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it like that. Then she read the first page on 89, working with others. You can help when no one else can. And then at the bottom, you can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics and addicts. You're taking people through the steps, Dan. Not making coffee, greeting, sharing. That's great for your AA clubhouse and AA, but in a group. But taking meetings, that's great. Spreading the message, carrying the message one-on-one. Yeah, no. She goes, you don't have to kill yourself, Stan. And you don't need medication. You need to do steps 10, 11, and 12. She goes, 1 through 9, get us recovered. 10, 11, 12, keep us recovered. That's when I got in touch with, I'd known Chris Raymond for a while. And so I asked those guys take me through the book again. Except this time, I've been accountable to them ever since about doing 10, 11, and 12. Doing 10 daily. Doing on an awakening every morning. I do a written inventory every night. I thought, well, how am I going to take people through the book, man? I start doing 10 the way it says. I start doing 11 the way it says. All of a sudden, people start asking me to take them through the literature. And that's what it's been like the last 20 years. Because I'm coming up on 30 years in October. And I do still do that accountability email with those guys every Sunday of what I've done the last week. And what it's shown me is how much grace I've been given. This is the most powerful thing I've ever been a part of and the most heartbreaking thing I've been a part of. The amount of grace, because I see my mistakes and blames on a daily basis, and I see how God intervenes, and I get this life. It's almost like survivor's guilt sometimes. Because now I know about the simple program. How easy, how little I do. I just cooperate. When I do want to do more, it's usually because I start to get impatient. I think timing's off. Better read another book. I better try harder. Might as well rest satisfaction on try harder instead of wait. Pray and wait, Stan. That's the biggest action word for someone like me. Wait it out. I cannot stand the sayings that rhyme. I want to rip my face off. But I have a buddy of mine. He's always like, Stan, the healing is in the feeling. And I'm always like, I swear to God. But to sit with the uncomfortability of being selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and frightened. Treated alcoholism. Continue to watch for these things. That at the very end of all the instruction, God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. See, I have another buddy of mine that's like, Stan, you're getting exactly what you ever wanted and wished for and dreamed of. And I'm like, I know, I just didn't know it was going to be on this path. It was going to be this work. It was going to be this hard internally on my insides. That I don't like being sad. I don't like being uncomfortable. I don't like waiting. I don't like being anxious. I don't like being afraid. I don't like that the only thing I have for fear is to ask God to remove it and direct my attention to who he would have me be. I want prevention against resentments. What I have is I have to master them. There's no preventative measure. It gives me the recipe. That is the number one offender. See, I had my friend Bodie. We used to run after work along the Intercoastal every day. We were just tight, man. He had probably 5-6 years more than I did. I'd be at the Triangle Club taking guys through the book. He would be at the table next to me. He had first gotten clean and sober in NA and ACT in Cleveland, had moved down to South Florida. Man, decades we were together just doing stuff, man. He'd come over and watch football. He was an Ohio State guy. I moved out to Park City about 8 years ago. Bodie called me and said, "Hey man, can I come out there?" And me and my wife were like, "Yeah, man, come stay with us." He stayed with us for 3 months. One time we were kind of down here, and this is my basement, and we were bullshitting. I'm like, "You doing 10 step every day? You doing this live?" And he said, "Nah." Kind of the optional thing like I had been doing. Nah. You doing the 11 step like it says? Well, I jump on this trampoline for an hour every morning. I do this stuff called movement, moving meditation. I'm like, and it sounds similar, right? Okay. Sounds similar. You taking guys through the book anymore? I just go to lots of meetings, Stan. All right. He moved to Salt Lake, stayed about a year, moved back to West Palm. I don't know, a month later, a guy calls me up and says, "Hey man, Bodie was house sitting for some friends of ours, and when they came home, he'd hung himself in the backyard." Forget that I'm in the grips of a progressive illness. That if I stop treating it, it's not as if though like there's been interruptions. That's what a progressive illness is. It goes right along. I get when people talk about the roads gotten narrower. Yeah, because I got this illness that continues no matter what. Can't get away from the medical facts about this thing. Just like if I had diabetes or heart disease. That's why I have to keep treating it. And these spiritual principles and medicinal principles have been around since mankind. It's just they were put into a recipe back in 1935, 39 that works for someone like me, that they don't have to do lobotomies anymore. Or just get locked up till we die. And that I now have a responsibility to carry this message, not my message, this message. And yet the results are just fantastic. The promises, yeah. What that guy told me 29 years ago. Stan, you're going to have an extraordinary life. Yeah. Because I get way beyond my pay grade and everything I've done, where I live, the stuff I have, the relationships I have, the jobs I've had, what I have now. It just does. On paper, I shouldn't have it. That's how I know. Trying to describe this spiritual experience, this psychic change, trying to describe what God has done it's impossible. And yet I know it's real. It's available for everybody. Any alcoholic or addict that is willing to do this. We're up to now, June 29th, 2024. This is you want that psychic change, that spiritual experience that it talks about. There's also another part on that front page of working with others. On page 89, where they knew this is an experience you must not miss. And I almost missed out. I almost missed it. Because I thought I knew. Or that it wouldn't work for me. Or back to that thing that I always say underneath my breath or in my mind, don't tell me what to do. Well, it wasn't my idea, so I'm not going to do it. I have an illness that bitterly opposes its treatment. That's why it's so difficult. An obsession that condemns me to pick up, and then once I pick up, this phenomenon of craving that condemns me to do it till I die. Period. Who knew that doing this work and being this disciplined would provide so much freedom? I thought, of course, it was the opposite. Freedom was doing what I wanted to do. And that was the bondage. This selfish self-centeredness. I remember I was working with these professionals. They're all professionals. I mean, I was too, but I didn't feel like it. They were all the co-hosts and the hosts of the shows on ESPN and stuff. And we all went to lunch or something. I'm the only alcoholic addict at the table. And somehow we started talking about the conversation of what do you think about when you wake up? And I mean, they're talking like family, pets, friends, legends. They're like, Stan, what do you think about? I'm like, me. What the fuck? Like, who else? You know, like, no wonder I need On Awakening in the morning. Like, that was just a few years ago, man. That one, like, because the minute I crack this book open and start reading On Awakening, something happens. And I think about my written inventory the night before. What could we have done better? And I'm not going to self-talk myself into it, or this time it's God, I need it. I lack the power. Lack of power is my dilemma. That I have moral and philosophical convictions galore, but I couldn't live up to them. No wonder I need God. Jeez. Readily available. The big lie I always told myself was that I was separated. I was never separated. I was just blocked off. These spiritual channels were blocked off because of my alcoholism and drug addiction. And now I have a way out. And it's funny, in the book, they talk about one we resolutely can agree upon. It's like, yeah, when I do the work out of the book, I can agree upon it. When I don't do the work, yeah, I don't. I'll end with this. There was a guy, a meeting I used to go to down in West Palm. And this guy he'd always introduce himself. My name's Mike Hayden. And I'm a drug addict and alcoholic, and it's a privilege to be here. And I used to be like, what is he talking about? This is like a life sentence, Mike. This is when the suffering starts. Like, now I know what he was talking about. Thanks for letting me share.